Hello everyone, Books with Banks back again with another video. Apologies, I know it's been a little bit since I've made a video. Things have just been kind of going on in my life, but I'm really happy to be back to update you all with how my year's been so far in 2023, what might be to come this year, so to do that, I thought I would kind of try something new for myself, and for me kind of joining this whole booktube thing, I thought I would do a booktube tag video. I saw Alex at Tall Guy Reads do this, and I liked his approach of it's just a tag that's out there kind of for anyone to pick up, grab, make their, or, add to their list of content. So yeah, major shout out to him. I love Tall Guy Reads and everything he's doing over there. I really hope he continues to enjoy the Malazan books. But anyway, I figured I'd mix this tag video kind of with my mid-year check-in video and answer these 13 prompts posed by the tag. Before we go any further, it really would mean a lot if you could pretty please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much. So I think I'll give this answer, or I'll give the main answer to each question, but also I might mention with some of these a few of the other top contenders. So here goes. Question: what's my favorite book I've read so far this year? This one's pretty easy, honestly. I barely had to pause to think about it. Now, I will say that Ian Esselmont's new Malazan entry, Forge of the High Mage, right there, that almost gets this prize, but it's edged out by the brilliant duology that is the second story arc of Janny Wurts' Wars of Light and Shadow series. These two books here, since this is a duology really comprised of both books, Ships of Marior and Warhost, to give this favorite book of the year to just one, I'd have to go with Warhost. Book 3 in the overall series. Just great, thought-provoking fantasy and beautiful command of the language, so easily my favorite book of the year so far. Then, that was question 1. Question 2, what's my favorite sequel I've read so far this year? Well, I could kind of stick with this and just say Ships of Marior instead of Warhost, because this is technically book 2 of the whole large series. But to kind of spread the love and kind of mix things up, get to, give myself a chance to talk about other things I've been reading, I'll actually give this to a book that I just finished reading earlier the other day. Some hints before the reveal. I think this book does a perfect job of a fantasy sequel. Basically everything you'd want in a fantasy sequel. It expands the world with a multitude of additional characters and backstories and settings and so much lore, while also following up on the consequences of everyone's actions and kind of the traumas of the first book. I'm also a little bit surprised at how much I'm enjoying this series so far. So the winner of this Best Sequel award goes to Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Mist and Fury. Yay. I'm very excited to continue with this series, especially with how this sequel left off. Next, what's a new release that I haven't read yet, but I'm excited to? Easy peasy, and this third question and fourth one will kind of go hand in hand, but this is made easier by the fact that I'm not really reading a ton of newer or even recent releases, but this easily goes to Philip Chase's The Prophet of Edan, right here. I really liked the first book, book 1, and I'm excited to get into this bad boy as soon as I get a chance. Along the same lines, what's the book I'm most looking forward to being released later this year? That's question 4. Again, honestly, because I'm not reading a ton of newer things, I'm going to stick with the same series with Philip Chase's Edan trilogy, and I believe the third book, correct me if I'm wrong, it might be The War for Edan, something like that. But yeah, that's what I'm most looking forward to being released in the second half of the year. Next up, question 5. What has been my most disappointing read so far this year? Now, I considered putting N.K. Jemison's The Stone Sky in for this entry, but ultimately I think that's probably too harsh of a placement for my just not enjoying this book as much as the first two. Now, for those of you who've read this, there's 3 storylines going on. I love 2 of them, and I found the one with our main character I found that story a little bit disappointing compared to what came before. Trekking across the desert and things like this. I adore, and things like this. But still, because I loved the rest of the book, the other two storylines here, and even how the ending and how it wrapped up, I don't want to give this like most disappointing. And then when I thought about it a little more, it kind of became really, really easy, or it made a lot of sense, because I do adore the works of William Shakespeare, and in particular, I love his history plays, even the ones I find a bit drier. I could always find something positive or exciting to say or analyze about these histories. For instance, the Henry VI trilogy I know gets some flack, but I actually really, really enjoyed all three of these. But that was not the case for another one of his histories, and I cannot really think of much to defend this one, or to say positive about it, and that would be King John. Now I don't have a physical copy of this. I might flash up the picture, an image of the cover on the screen, but yeah. Also, maybe I should say, maybe I just need to see it performed. Maybe I need to read it when maybe I'm in a better mood. But as it stands, Shakespeare's King John is easily my biggest disappointment of the year so far. Next up, what's been my biggest surprise so far? I could say it's how much I've actually been enjoying the ACOTAR Court of Thorns and Roses series. I showed you book 2 of this already. I could say that. I could also say a really close top contender would be Brian D. Dietrich's Singlebound. These are poems about Superman and Wonder Woman. Really great stuff. I have a fuller review of this on my channel if you haven't checked that out. This was really surprising. Before I met him at ICFA, I never really would have thought of picking up anything like this, but I'm so glad I did. Yeah, this is a ton of fun. So this was close to being my biggest surprise of the year, but my actual biggest surprise, and I don't have a physical copy of this, but I can throw up an image of it on the screen. My actual biggest surprise goes to how I just picked up and read Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I just read it on a whim, and I really, really loved it. I was familiar with the story and the title characters, and all the pop culture references and things that the story has inspired, but I had never actually read the classic story for myself. So I did, and it was so much fun. I found it undeniably page-turning and thrilling. So yeah, if you haven't checked out Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I definitely recommend it. 7th, who's my new favorite author? Where this was like the first year that I read anything by this author. Okay, so I could say Philip Chase, but while he might win this spot by the end of the year, when I look back on the Adan trilogy as a whole, right now I'm still kind of, we're all kind of waiting to see where he takes that story, where the series goes. So no, I think for this one, I'll dip outside of the fantasy genre, actually. And I read my first Taylor Jenkins Reid book this year, that being Daisy Jones and the Six. And I think despite the challenging format and in some cases subject matter that Reid chose to cover in this sort of VH1 documentary style novel, I think she absolutely knocked it out of the park. Honestly, she earned my confidence in her, where even if the premise of a story of hers sounds a little bit wonky, a little bit shaky, as long as I know that she's the one that wrote it, I'll trust that it really is a pretty good book. So yeah, I think this one goes to Taylor Jenkins Reid. A bit of a curveball, non-fantasy curveball in there. Number 8, who's my new fictional character crush? And I did clear this with my fiance, and I think she's okay with it, especially because it's from a book series that she enjoys. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna start going back on some of these books now that we're getting a little further in the list. But this character does come from book 2 in Sarah J. Maas's series, and I don't want to spoil things too much. While there's a lot of characters in this series that are described as beautiful, and you could almost see like the cast of any CW like model type actors like playing everyone, there's one character that doesn't get exactly that same level of, like, she's not described as like drop dead gorgeous exactly. Nothing nothing quite like that, even though I'm sure she is still very lovely. But my crush is actually a character named Amryn, who really just for the first time shows up in here. She's very powerful and intriguing because there's all this mystery around who she is, what she is, where she comes from, why can she do the things that she... Really fascinating, and that's always going to help me crush on someone. So yeah, if I would say this series lends itself to letting readers crush on the characters or get, you know, a little bit romantic-y like attachments to some of these characters. And so I don't know, I just, instead of the ones that are described as more, you know, that typical drop dead gorgeous, those typical attributes that make people prettier or more attractive, the Amryn character is the one that I'm really drawn to, and I feel like I would be really attracted to if I were to enter the world of Prithian. Yeah. So Amryn, interesting character. Yeah, cannot wait to see what else comes of her in the series. But now, who's been my favorite fictional character overall of this year? This is honestly another easy one, but here's some of the other top contenders from Jenny Wurts' Wars of Light and Shadow. I could say characters like the Mad Prophet Dakar, or Theric from Philip Chase's The Way of Adan. Might say the High Priest Bledla. But the number one spot here goes to none other than Dream himself, or Morpheus, or whatever you want to call him, from Neil Gaiman's beautifully written and drawn Sandman graphic novel. What a powerful presence in every line, every panel, great character. So yeah, that was question 9, favorite overall character, Dream. Question 10, what book made me cry? I am going to have to go back and kind of keep doubling up on some of my picks in this list. As with this one, I have to return to Jenny Wurts' War Host of Vastmark. This has to win this prize, even though like Jemison Stone Sky and Taylor Jenkins Reid's Daisy Jones and the Six, each of those kind of got me to the brink of tears once or twice. This book, what Jenny Wurts did here, actually managed to draw those tears out of me on 2 very specific moments I can remember, and a handful of other moments that got me really close. But yeah, that's honestly part of the reason I consider this the best book I've read so far this year. So yeah, Jenny Wurts definitely made me cry, but in all the best ways that you want when you read epic fantasy. Next, what book made this year, or did I read this year that made me really happy? This one, here's the thing about me. I love a good puzzle, and I get so much joy trying to puzzle out the witty, the strange, the random, metaphorical, or is it just absurd, those kind of elements of a story. And therefore, I just had such a fun time reading Charles G. Finney's underrated classic, The Circus of Dr. Lao. Please check it out if you haven't. I did a whole discussion about this with Daniel Creed. Brilliant. I call him easily the expert on this book and the work of Finney. But yeah, I can't promise that everyone will love this book, but I can promise it'll have you going kind of like, what the heck did I just read? What was that about? And, you know, kind of chuckling along the way. Yeah, really fun time. Bizarre, but fun. Next, the most beautiful book I've bought this year. Well, I'm sorry, Tall Guy Reads, but I have to copy you on this one. I also managed to snag for myself one of these gorgeous subpress editions of Erickson's Dead House Gates, Book 2 of Malazan Book of the Fallen. Now, if when another order, we'll get to it when we get to it, when that order is eventually shipped, unfortunately for Dead House Gates here, this one will get bumped into second place. But don't worry, though, I'll definitely make a video when that other book comes here. But this is just beautiful book. Beautiful. I love these subpress editions. And this is only the second subpress I have. I have a Reaper scale from the first printing. But yeah, this is, oh my gosh, yeah. Okay. 13th question, the final question of this whole thing. Last, but of course not least, I suppose this is the part of the list where I'm supposed to freak out, why it's called the FreakOut Tag. So here's everything I still plan to read the rest of this year. So of course, we'll go kind of series by series. Court of Wings and Ruin, Court of Frost and Starlight, A Court of Silver Flames. Those are the 3 next books in Maas's ACOTAR series. I hope to at least read one more of those. It would be nice if I could finish that series out. We'll see what happens. Also, The Prophet of Adan, and again, I think it's like the War of Adan, something like that for the 3rd book or for the trilogy of Philip Chase's. I'm definitely going to read those pretty much as they come out for the rest of the year, and that'll be nice to kind of finish reading up that trilogy this year. Have no fear, no doubts, I'll finish that one. Next, with Jenny Wurts and her Wars of Light and Shadow series up there, going to read book 4, Fugitive Prince, book 5, Grand Conspiracy, and I hope to at least get through book 6, Peril's Gate. Then I also plan to read volumes 3 and 4 of this type of collection of Gaiman's Sandman. I also plan to read through the last, through at least volume 14 of the original Berserk manga, because I think in volume 14 of that finishes out, or maybe goes a little bit past the end of the Golden Age arc, and I've kind of been sleeping on that series for a while, but I only have 4 more of those kind of smaller volumes to read, so I'm definitely going to finish that up, maybe in the next month or so. We'll see what happens. Then Then another big author that I'm going to focus on is Diana Gabaldon. I have kind of been sleeping also on her Outlander books, but I've just now, end of this month, beginning of July, end of June, beginning of July, I've finally picked up book 4, Drums of Autumn again. I hope to read through book 4, Drums of Autumn, book 5, The Fiery Cross, and maybe even book 6, A Breath of Snow and Ashes. These are massive books though, so I mean, you know, we'll see what happens. I hope to get through at least book 6. We'll see. Yeah, of her stuff. And then, kind of just for fun, I never progressed beyond Dune Messiah in the multiple times that I've read the Dune books that I have read, Dune and Dune Messiah, and I figure kind of on the hype train, and I know the movie's not really going to have much to do with this book, but I figured with the building hype up towards the release of Dune Part 2, the movie adaptation of the first half, or of the second half of the first book, along that train, I'll read the 3rd Dune book finally, Children of Dune, to at least close out that first trilogy, the first set of 3 of Frank Herbert's original series. So that should do it, and hopefully I can manage to read all of that and then some. As you'll all notice, most of these things are in larger series, and who knows, I could just on a whim pivot and dedicate the end of the year to focusing on just completely finishing out any one of those series more than the others. I guess we'll have to wait and see what I do. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.